The air over Sundown Ridge was dry and merciless, as if the desert itself wanted to watch blood spill. Dust swirled around wooden boots and iron spurs as townsfolk crowded the square. They had gathered not for music or trade, but for vengeance. At the center stood a young Apache woman, her wrists bound tight with rope, her dark hair tangled from the struggle. The makeshift gallows behind her creaked in the hot wind, a grim reminder of what the town believed to be justice. The sheriff barked at the crowd to keep order, but his words drowned under the chant. "Hang her! Hang the Apache thief!" Men spat tobacco juice into the dirt. Women clutched children close, and every pair of eyes burned with the same fire. To them, she was guilty of stealing horses, guilty of raiding wagons, guilty simply for being Apache. Truth no longer mattered, only blood did. She kept her chin high, though her lips trembled. The bruises on her cheek were fresh, a mark from the deputy who had struck her when she refused to beg for mercy. Beneath the defiance, fear flickered. Yet it was not fear of death. It was fear that her people would never know where her bones lay, that her spirit would be left wandering the white man's gallows, instead of finding its way back to the sacred mountains. The noose dangled above like a vulture's shadow. Just as the hangman stepped forward, a figure broke from the edge of the crowd. A cowboy, dust-stained hat pulled low, revolver at his hip, moved with a strange calmness, as though the chaos around him did not exist. His boots struck the ground with deliberate rhythm. Crunch of gravel, squeak of leather, the crowd parting in confusion rather than resistance. Nobody knew his name. Some swore they had seen him drift through town before, never staying, always riding on. To others he was a stranger born of the desert wind. He spoke with a voice steady enough to cut through the noise. "Untie her. You'll not kill a woman today." The sheriff's hand dropped to his pistol. Murmurs rippled. "You got no say here, stranger," he growled. "She's Apache. She's guilty." The cowboy's eyes, gray like storm clouds, held the sheriff's without flinching. "I've seen guilt. It doesn't look like her." His hand hovered near his revolver, and in that instant the entire square knew. One wrong move, and blood would water the dust. The hangman hesitated, sweat dripping from his brow. The woman looked at the cowboy, confusion and disbelief flashing in her eyes. No one had ever stood for her before. Not when her people were driven from their lands. Not when her brother was shot for crossing the wrong pasture. Not when she was dragged here in chains. I've never been much for dancing. The square erupted. Some shouted for the sheriff to shoot, others for the cowboy to back down. But tension held them all frozen, caught in the eye of a storm. The Apache woman's breath quickened. Her heart pounded loud enough she swore it echoed in her ears. Dust stung her eyes, or maybe it was tears. Then the gunshot cracked the silence. It was not the sheriff's. It was the cowboy's. His draw had been faster than the human eye could follow, his bullet tearing the sheriff's hat clean off and lodging into the wooden post behind. Before the crowd could react, his second shot cut the rope of the noose, sending it snapping harmlessly to the ground. With his third, he blasted the shackles on her wrists. The smell of gunpowder burned through the air. Chaos roared alive. Women screamed. Men scrambled for cover. Some reached for rifles, others froze in terror. Smoke curled around the cowboy as he spun, pulling the stunned Apache woman toward him. "Run," he hissed. "Now." She stumbled at first, her legs weak from captivity, but adrenaline surged. They shoved through the sea of townsfolk, the cowboy's revolver barking thunder at anyone daring to block their way. Horses stampeded in fright. Chickens flapped into the air. The crowd, moments ago united in bloodlust, fractured into panic. They reached the edge of town where two horses were tied. One chestnut stallion, one black mare. The cowboy cut the ropes in a swift motion, lifted her onto the mare, and swung onto his stallion. Behind them, voices howled and rifles cracked, bullets whistling past like angry hornets. The chase had begun. Dust rose behind their gallop, swallowing Sundown Ridge and its gallows in a storm of sand. Wind tore at her hair. Dried blood caked her wrists. Yet freedom tasted sharp and wild on her tongue. She clung to the saddle, glancing sideways at the man who had risked his life for hers. His face was hard, jaw clenched, but his eyes flickered toward her, storm gray meeting midnight brown. And in that glance was something she had not felt in years. Hope, fragile and dangerous. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe she might live. For the first time, she wondered why a stranger would care. And for the first time, she feared what it might cost him. The desert stretched endless and merciless, its silence broken only by the pounding of hooves. Dust swirled around the riders as if the land itself wanted to swallow them whole. Nayeli clung to the mane of the black mare, her wrists still raw from ropes, her breath ragged with fear and exhaustion. Beside her, the cowboy, Cole, leaned low over his chestnut stallion, guiding the beast with a precision born of countless escapes. Behind them, chaos thundered from Sundown Ridge. The townsmen shouted, rifles cracking, curses carried on the dry wind. Bullets hissed through the air, slicing dust from sagebrush and stone. Cole twisted in his saddle, his revolver spitting fire. One rider fell, tumbling in a storm of dust and screams. The others hesitated only briefly. Hatred kept them mounted. Hatred was heavier than fear. The trail cut sharply into the canyons, walls of stone closing in. Shadows pooled like ink, each bend a possible trap. Nayeli whispered to her ancestors, calling on the spirits of mountain and wind. But the echo of hoofbeats told her plainly, men were closer than spirits tonight. Cole rode with grim mastery. He pressed his stallion hard, then eased when the ground grew treacherous. His movements wasted no breath, no motion. Dust streaked his jaw, sweat carved lines down his face, yet he kept glancing at her, checking, assuring himself she still rode. Keep low, he barked above the wind. Don't stop for anything. She obeyed, pressing her chest to the mare's neck, her body burning with exhaustion. Rope burns stung with every shift, but she forced her heels into the horse's sides. Better pain than the hangman's rope. Better aching lungs than death on a gallows. Hours felt compressed into heartbeats. The sun bled into the cliffs, painting them crimson like wounds in the earth. At last, the shouts behind began to fade. Gunfire cracked less often, until only the desert wind chased them. Cole slowed the stallion, searching, then guided them into a hidden gulch where rock walls shut out the sky. They reined in at last. The horses trembled, foam streaking their flanks. Nayeli slid from her saddle, knees giving way until she caught herself against stone. The canyon's silence pressed tight, as though sound itself would betray them. Cole tethered the animals, then pulled a dented cup from his canteen. He handed it to her without ceremony. Drink. The water tasted metallic, warm from the desert heat, but it slid down her throat like salvation. She gulped greedily until she realized his storm-gray eyes were on her. not with suspicion, but with something metallic clicks punctuating her words. Night crept into the canyon, shadows swallowing the stone. Coyotes cried in the distance. He struck flint, coaxing a flame to life. Soon a small fire crackled, its glow painting them both in restless orange. They sat opposite each other. The fire burned like a fragile truce. Nayeli studied him through flickering light. The scars across his knuckles, the slump of shoulders, the coat worn pale from years of dust and road. He was no wandering drifter. Something weighted him deeper than she could see. "You can't return to town," she whispered. "They'll brand you an outlaw." He prodded the fire with a stick. Sparks leapt like fleeting stars. Wouldn't be the first time. Her heart stumbled. His words carried ghosts, though he offered none. She didn't press. Instead, she whispered, "My name is Nayeli." He looked up, silent for a moment, then nodded. "Cole." The canyon seemed to still, holding its breath. Names were dangerous things, gifts or curses. Sharing them laid the first fragile stones of a bridge neither of them had asked for. Stars unveiled above, scattered across the black. The desert night was vast, swallowing sound and mercy. Only the crackle of fire and the restless snort of horses proved the world still alive. Cole sat with revolver near, eyes scanning the dark. Yet when he saw her shiver, his gaze softened. Perhaps it was the memory of her defiance on the gallows. Perhaps it was the truth that he too carried the weight of condemnation. Whatever it was, something in him bent. At last he spoke, low but certain. "At dawn we ride. Into the mountains. Harder to track us there." Fear shadowed her nod. "They won't stop, Cole. Not until I'm dead. Maybe you too." He met her eyes, firelight silvering his face. "Then we'll just have to be harder to kill." Silence fell again, not empty, but thick with unspoken truths. Two hearts, once strangers, now beat together in defiance, beneath a sky that cared nothing for love or survival. The desert listened, old and merciless, as outlaw and condemned prepared to gamble everything against the world. The fire burned low, snapping softly as dawn crept closer. Cole had not slept. He sat with his back against the canyon wall, revolver loose in one hand, eyes fixed on the stars above. Every whisper of wind, every shuffle of stone made his muscles tense. Danger was always near, but silence had a way of stirring ghosts, louder than bullets. Across the fire, Nayeli dozed fitfully, curled in her torn blanket. The shadows of the flames touched her face, painting the bruises and the strength beneath them. She had survived humiliation, chains, and the gallows shadow. Yet her breathing now was almost childlike. Cole studied her longer than he meant to, then forced himself to look away. The desert had taught him not to need anyone. But something about her presence gnawed at the iron he had built around his heart. When the first streaks of morning touched the cliffs, Cole rose. "We ride," he said simply. His tone left no room for delay. Nayeli stirred, pulling herself upright with effort. Her body ached, wrists raw. but she swung into the saddle without complaint. They left the gulch in silence, the fire dying behind them. The land opened wide. Jagged ridges gave way to open flats, where the horizon shimmered in heat. Cole guided them north toward the mountains. There, rocks and trees might shield them. Here, they were ants on an endless plain. For hours they rode. The silence stretched until Nayeli broke it. "They will not forgive you," she said quietly. Cole kept his eyes ahead. Never asked them to. "You gave up your place among them. For me." He glanced at her. The wind tangled her hair, but her gaze held steady. He looked back to the trail. "Place?" His laugh was dry. "Never had one." Her lips parted, but no words came. She turned away, letting the silence return. Yet inside her, something shifted. He had no people, no home. In that, they were alike. By midday, they stopped beneath a twisted mesquite to water the horses. The desert shimmered, waves of heat bending the air. Cole poured a little into his hat for his stallion, then passed the canteen to Nayeli. She drank sparingly, then asked, "Why risk so much for someone you don't know?" He wiped sweat from his brow with the back of his hand. "I've seen enough nooses. Didn't care to watch another." "You could have turned away." Hands. Her wrists still ached, but less now. She looked at him through the glow. "You remind me of someone," she said softly. Cole raised a brow. "Should I be worried?" "My brother. He died last winter." Her voice trembled, though she held it steady. "The whites shot him for crossing land that had once been ours." He never lowered his eyes, even when they raised their guns. "You look at people the same way, without fear." Cole's jaw tightened. For a long time he said nothing, feeding the fire with a branch. Finally he spoke. "Fear's always there. The trick is not letting them see it." Nayeli's throat ached. She hugged her knees to her chest, letting the firelight hide her tears. They sat in silence, but the quiet between them no longer felt like emptiness. It was heavy, charged, as if words were too fragile to carry what lingered in their hearts. When Cole finally lay back, staring at the stars, Nayeli found herself speaking again. "Do you believe in destiny?" His eyes flicked to her. "Can't say I do. I used to. I thought the spirits guided us. But if destiny is real, why did it lead me to a noose?" Cole let the question hang in the air. The fire crackled. The horses snorted softly in the dark. Then he said, "Maybe destiny's just another name for the choices we make. You chose to stand tall when they wanted you broken. That's why you're here now." Her chest tightened. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe that courage, not fate, had brought her to this moment. Later, when the fire burned low, Cole drifted toward sleep. Nayeli remained awake, watching the embers fade. The night pressed close, yet for the first time since her capture, she did not feel alone. She reached out, fingers brushing the earth between them, as if to shorten the distance. She did not touch him, but the gesture was enough to stir something in her chest, something dangerous, something undeniable. As dawn approached, she whispered into the silence. Words meant more for herself than for him. If love is a curse, then let it be mine. The desert held her secret, carrying it into the wind, where only the stars bore witness. The mountains rose like jagged teeth, their shadows cutting across the land as Cole and Nayeli pressed north. Days of hard riding had worn them thin, yet the danger behind drove them onward. The posse from Sundown Ridge trailed them without mercy, and now another threat stirred ahead. At first it was whispers, the faint echo of hoofbeats at night, shapes flitting across ridgelines. Then came the smoke. One dawn, Cole spotted a black column curling into the sky behind them. He squinted hard. "They're still on us," he muttered, "relentless as wolves." By midday, the trail led them into a valley ringed with stone. Cole drew his stallion to a halt, eyes scanning the ridges. "They're driving us," he said darkly, "herding us right where they want." Nayeli stiffened. She recognized the pattern. "They'll press us between two fires. The men of the town from behind, and my people from ahead." Cole turned sharply. "Your people?" Her voice was heavy. "The Apache have heard my name. Some call me traitor for being taken alive. They won't trust you, Cole, and they won't trust me either." As if summoned by her words, a sound rolled across the valley. Low, steady, a drumbeat. One strike at a time, echoing from cliff to cliff. Then another joined it, then another, until the air itself seemed to vibrate. The war drums had awakened. Cole's hand dropped near his revolver. "They're close." Figures appeared on the ridges, warriors painted in ochre and black, feathers streaming from their hair. Rifles glinted, arrows caught the sunlight. The drums beat louder, faster, until even the horses stamped and whinnied in fear. Nayeli's breath caught, her eyes fixed on the markings, the colors. "It is my uncle's band," she whispered. "They will not welcome us." Cole spurred his horse forward, shielding her. "Then we find another way." But the canyon offered no mercy. Cliffs hemmed them in like jaws snapping shut. Behind, shouts rang out. The posse from Sundown Ridge had reached the valley floor. Ahead, the Apache warriors stood, waiting. The trap had closed. Cole and Nayeli dismounted, leading the horses into a thicket of junipers. The air smelled of pine and smoke. Cole crouched low, scanning every vow. The drums quickened, beating like war itself marching down the cliffs. Warriors began to descend, their cries echoing through the stone. Behind, the posse's rifles cracked, bullets whining off rock. Nayeli pressed her fists to her temples. She was the rope stretched between two worlds, each pulling for blood. The first arrow struck a tree above Cole's head, quivering. He fired back, the blast booming in the canyon. Chaos erupted. Apache war cries colliding with English curses, arrows hissing, bullets sparking. Horses screamed, smoke filled the gulch. Cole grabbed Nayeli's arm. "Stay down," he barked, dragging her deeper into the junipers. But she tore free, desperation blazing. "No! If they see me only at your side, they will kill without listening. I must speak." Before he could stop her, she stepped into the clearing, arms raised high. Her voice rang out, defiant above the drums. "I am Nayeli, daughter of the mountains. I am no traitor." For one heartbeat, the drums faltered. Warriors paused, bows half drawn, confusion rippling through their ranks. Cole's breath caught. Perhaps they would listen. But the posse's rifles cracked again. A man cried out in Apache, falling with blood staining the grass. The fragile stillness shattered. Arrows rained down, thudding into earth and bark. Cole lunged, pulling Nayeli back as bullets tore past. Smoke stung their eyes. Screams tore the air. Between the two forces, the canyon had become a furnace of death. Nayeli's heart broke. Her uncle's warriors shouted her name with rage, while the posse roared for blood. No matter which side she chose, death waited for the other. She realized with icy certainty, survival might mean betraying both. The war drums pounded harder, faster, louder, until it felt as though the very earth shook beneath their beat. In that thunder, destiny itself seemed to demand an answer. The canyon was fire and thunder. Arrows rained, bullets cracked, and smoke curled upward in choking plumes. Horses screamed, men shouted in Apache and English, and over it all the war drums hammered without mercy. Cole shoved Nayeli behind a boulder, his revolver blazing until the cylinder clicked empty. He slammed in fresh rounds, jaw clenched, eyes wild with determination. "Stay down," he barked, though he knew she wouldn't. She was too proud, too fierce to cower. Nayeli's heart pounded in rhythm with the drums. Her uncle's warriors surged forward, their painted faces fierce with rage. Behind, the posse pressed closer, rifles spitting fire. She was trapped between two storms, each demanding her loyalty, each willing to spill blood. Her uncle's voice rang out in Apache. "Nayeli, step away from the white man. Prove you are not false." Tears burned her eyes. If she obeyed, Cole would be slaughtered. If she defied, her people would mark her a traitor forever. Cole rose, firing again. An Apache rifleman toppled from the rocks. Another arrow hissed past his shoulder. "Run for the horses," he shouted. But she didn't move. Her legs felt rooted in the earth, as if destiny itself had bound her there. "I can't," she whispered. Cole turned, storm-gray eyes catching hers. Even through the smoke, she saw it, the choice already made in his heart. He would fight until death, not for glory, not even for survival, but to keep his vow to her. The drums pounded faster, faster, until they seemed to shake the very stone. Warriors closed in, the posse advancing from behind. Nayeli stood, lifting her voice above the chaos. "Enough," she cried in her native tongue. "I am Nayeli, daughter of the mountains. I will not choose between blood and blood." For one heartbeat, both sides hesitated. The drums faltered, war cries softened. Faces turned toward her, confusion flickering. Then a rifle cracked. A bullet struck the rock near her feet, spraying dust. The fragile stillness shattered. Cole grabbed her hand. "There's no time." He pulled her toward the horses, but the path was blocked. Warriors on one side, townsmen on the other. The canyon narrowed ahead, a slit of darkness between sheer cliffs. Cole's eyes darted there, calculating. "It's a dead run," he muttered, "but it's our only chance." They sprinted, dodging arrows and bullets. Nayeli stumbled once, but Cole hauled her up, never letting go. Together they reached the horses. Cole leapt into his saddle, then dragged her onto the mare. Gunfire erupted, arrows hissed. The war drums thundered like a heartbeat chasing them. They charged into the canyon's throat. The walls closed tight, shadows swallowing them. Behind, the two forces clashed in full fury. Rocks tumbled from gunfire above. Twice an arrow grazed Cole's hat. Nayeli's mare stumbled, blood streaking its flank, but she forced it onward. At last the canyon split into open ground. The mountains towered above, snow gleaming on their crowns. Freedom seemed a breath away, but the drums followed still, faint but relentless, echoing from the cliffs. Nayeli knew this was not escape, it was reprieve. Both sides would hunt them again. They slowed at a stream hidden in pine. Horses drank greedily, sides heaving. Cole slid from his saddle, scanning the ridges, revolver still in hand. Nayeli dismounted, her legs trembling. For a long moment neither spoke. Only the whisper of water and the distant echo of drums filled the silence. Finally, Nayeli said, "We cannot run forever. The world will not allow it." Cole looked at her, shadows in his eyes. "Then we fight until it does." She stepped closer, her hand trembling as it brushed his arm. "If we fight together." His breath caught. For the first time, the iron mask on his face cracked. He touched her cheek gently, the gesture almost reverent. "Together," he said. The drums echoed faintly, a reminder of enemies near and far. But for that moment, in the shadow of the mountains, their hearts beat louder than war. The choice had been made, not for town, not for tribe, but for each other. A choice with no return, a path into fire and fate. And the Wild West, merciless and untamed, waited to see whether love could outlast the drums of war.